Hey, thanks for tuning into my channel. And today we're going to talk about a game that I absolutely love to death, and a game that doesn't see a lot of love on a wider market as it used to, but a lot of devoted fans who really love this game, such as myself, and that is Marvel Overpower. So I just wanted to talk about the game, just to give you guys who maybe are already familiar with it something to talk about, who are not, but for those mainly who are not familiar with it, a reason to pick up this game and try it out, because it is definitely for the comic book lover and those who like gaming. If you like gaming and comic books, it's a great combination and a great fun time to have. So again, this is my video just about on Overpower. Just cover three things really briefly, just looking at, again, just an overview, general overview, how you play it, and my thoughts on it. So Overpower was a game that came out back in '94. From Fleer was the distributor, but Marvel was the one putting out the game. Now, it was started out as Marvel Overpower is the first set, and focusing on Marvel characters. The basic idea is you have a team of 4 characters who would battle out with an opponent's team of 4 characters until either they won all of their missions or completed their goal, or wiped out all of their opponent's characters, knocked them all out, and you'd be declared the victor. That simple. And the mechanics were very different at the time. It came right on in the heels of the big craze of Magic the Gathering, which, as we know today, is still a very popular game. Now, Marvel Overpower was very different in almost every respect, really. I mean, the most you could say in similarity was that it was a CCG. And for those who don't know what that is, a CCG is a customizable card game. Now, some people are not fans of that. Other people don't care. Other people are fans. I myself am a fan of a CCG format because it allows someone to be able to completely customize the deck any way they want and have that ready to go for any given game without having to pre-sort before every single game. You don't have to do that, unlike the living card game format where you bring all the cards to the table and then construct your deck, or the deck building format game, which you starts out there on the same basic and you can customize, but within a limited pool of what you've brought at the beginning collection, and you sort of build as the game goes. Either of those are just not the same attraction or flavor as a CCG is. Now, the biggest complaint people have, I hear, is, well, you have to pay money for the best cards. Well, it's a free market system, and anything in life you want something that you think is a better deal, a better car, a better house, is going to cost more than something that's a lesser grade usually. It's a free market. Deal with it. That's just the way things are. But, here's the advantage. It's an older game. '94 is when it came out. So now you can get, all but maybe the super really hard to get, really, really rare cards for dirt cheap. You can get a whole box of starters for really dirt cheap and still put together a deck and play a game. So the cost has dropped dramatically with the age of the game. But even then, you didn't need to have all the most pricey cards to win a game. That's what's great about the mechanic. So, and I'll get into how you play the game to explain that. But again, it came out in '94. The game ran for a base set, and then I believe around 8 expansions to that, ending with X-Men Overpower being the final one, and that was the end of it. And then it was supported for a number of years after that. It still had support. Now, the game received a lot of praise and a lot of fandom when it came out, because again, it was very different. So the uniqueness of the property of the game, the mechanics, and again the property, the license, and being, again, Marvel Comics, a pretty big name. So, and it ran for, like I said, for that time. Now, up until its third to last set, the game was pretty strong in terms of releasing a set on clockwork and being pretty consistent. Unfortunately, the last 2 sets, when Fleer decided not to continue distributing the product and Marvel deciding to take on the reins themselves, it caused some issues and delays with the production and release and distribution of that. And the decisions of Marvel at the time was really what derailed it. So the first, you had up through you had up through Classic Overpower, where it was distributed by Fleer, so they'd be distributed on time. It was what people could expect, Marvel or DC properties, and what they could expect. When Marvel took over the reins, unfortunately, the first of their two sets they ever released was Image Overpower. Now, for those who are Image fans, it was great for them because it was something long-awaited. For those who had been used to what was usually released, Marvel or DC properties, heavily Marvel properties, it was a total derail. It was a total shock. It was a total surprise to most people. People shaking their heads, kind of going, "Why this choice? Not one more of the people missed in DC or Marvel, especially DC." So that had people scratching their heads, and again, that came out with delays and so forth. Now, the last set, X-Men Overpower, that came out after Image Overpower, went back to the Marvel property, but again, a lot of delays in distribution and production, and a lot of delays that really disheartened people, fans. And then in addition, when it was cut, there was an error in the cutting of the cards when they were released, and so you couldn't mix the X-Men Overpower set cards with the other cards from Overpower without some kind of sleeves. They were off by so much, and so you couldn't mix it very well. And so that was another huge deterrent. And so after the poor reception of those two sets, and the general decline, because it did last through a lot of the life of the CCG boom, but then it also began to taper off with the general tapering off of the CCG boom of that time. So combine all three factors, Marvel decided to throw in the towel, and they decided that they would not produce any more of these games, any more of Overpower. So that's the brief history. There were some others that tried to come in and reproduce it, the effect and that kind of flavor. Wizards of the Coast tried to put together a CCG on the Marvel property based heavily on the movies. That did not fly. That did not go well. And then Fleer tried to do a Marvel Recharge, which was another attempt at doing something similar to a Marvel Overpower kind of thing, but radically different and very clunky. That didn't go over very well. It had maybe one or two sets. Did not go well. And then the next try after that run was the Versus system. Now, that actually went pretty well, and it went really popular. Lots of sets, went for quite some time. A lot of popularity, and people liked that. I was not a fan myself, and I'll get into the reasons why when I review the game at the end of this video. But needless to say, I was not a fan, and that eventually did end its run as well. Now, the Versus system has also tried to do a second attempt run, so to speak, by releasing the living card game format version of Versus system, and that can be found. I haven't tried and picked it up myself because I was never a huge fan of the first Versus system myself. So I don't know what it's like. I've heard different reviews on it. But anyway, so that's a basic run through the game, of the history of it. Now, let's get into how to play the game. Now, what you're going to start off with that game is you're going to have 4 characters, like I said, a team of 4, and then you're going to have a mission set, a set of 7 cards that compose one mission set. And in addition to the 4 heroes in the mission set, some players are allowed to have a location card or 2. And these location cards can be used in different aspects or ways, and I'll get into more specifics on those card types when we get into more specifics on the gameplay. But and any of those can be used. In fact, most players' decks now who play the game actively and pretty rigorously have a location card or 2 in their deck because they're very helpful. But anyway, but that's the basics. That's what you're going to use to fight your battles. It's designed to be basically an exchange of blows, one-on-one with another player, exchange blows, switching off until either player runs out of cards, and then that battle round ends. You draw a new hand, you go for another round, keep going, and this repeats until one player wins and another loses. And that's the basic run of the game. But So basically, just give you an idea of again the cards and how it works. So here's an example of one card, and I will let you see here. You can see it. This is Captain America from the Marvel Overpower set. Let me see if it can focus in better. There we go. So Captain America, and you see it has stats on energy, fighting, strength, and intellect. And this is an example. Now you're going to use those 4 stats that I said, energy, fighting, strength, and intellect, to fight your battles. Now every character is statted, and every character is statted on 3 to 4 of those skills. Now I'll explain why 3 to 4 in terms of the evolution of the game. But they'll have 3 to 4 stats and different ratings, and that just shows how good they are in those areas. As you saw previously, Captain America has an 8 fighting. On a scale of 1 to 8, he is as best as you can get on fighting. So he's very high in that, and it makes him a very strong character in gameplay. He has a secondary high stat, a 6 intellect, so he's also very smart, and that's very high on a very good, on a scale of 1 to 8, that's very good. And then he had the other 2 stats, his lowest being energy, I think a 2. That makes sense, because, I mean, Captain America is not, a Cyclops, for lack of a better word. But he had a pretty decent strength. But anyway, that's what they look at for what, and the stats and what their levels are for between your team of 4 will determine basically what your capabilities are during the game. I give you a scale what you're working with. So you're going to bring those 4, and you're going to battle with those cards. So for example, like I showed you, that was Captain America. This is one deck that I play with, but there's Captain America. Here's another one, X-Babies, who you see there. So that's another member of the team. So that's the second one in that team. And then here's another one. And this is Wonder Woman, as you'll see there. So there's Wonder Woman. That's third person. And then here's the fourth person, the person that I would have in this deck in reserve vision. As you can see, has an inherent ability. And that would be why, because of his inherent ability, why he's in reserve. But so those are the 4, for example, that I bring in this deck. So what that means in what I showed you is that, in discounting someone being knocked out or taken out of a battle for the rest of the game, I'm going to have up to 8 fighting that I can throw at my opponent, or up to 8 to defend with my opponent for, half of my team, 2 of which will be in the front line. And then, of course, and that gives you, again, an idea skill which you'll be using. So that's what you bring. So also really quick, just to show you. Now the other thing that your opponent will have, what you'll have in your deck, like I said, is you'll have these mission cards. So I'll give you an example of one of these mission cards. But here is a mission card. And this is, again, one of those cards that you have a set of 1 to 7, and this is an example of one of them, Thor there. So you'll have a set of 7 of those cards, and those are your mission cards, and that's what you'll bring. Now, the other card, like I said in the beginning, that might be an option that some players will be playing with are location cards. And they add aspects to what you can do. For example, you can use it as a home base, but here's a location card. Just an example here. I use that as a home base. And then also you can here's another location card, but I use this as a battle site, but it can also be used as a home base. But here's another card that's, again, another location card. Now, so that gives you an idea of what the basic setup cards are. So, just to, again, run through. So you're going to draw a hand of 8 cards, and you're going to, first you're going to bring the cards, you're going to put 1 in reserve. So in that case, I'd put Vision in reserve, Wonder Woman, X-Babies, and Captain America in front line. That's my team, that's the setup. I'd have the mission cards, the locations, and my deck. Shuffle the deck, and then you draw 8 cards. And you have a hand of 8, and your standard hand size every round, every battle is 8 cards, unless some other card changes that. And what you're going to do is you're going to look at what you have in your hand, and you're going to go ahead and start throwing attacks, switching off one by one. Now the basic unit of the game is, this is important to understand, the basic unit of this game, sorry, just one sec, let me pull that out for you. The basic unit of the game Alright, so the basic unit of the game is a power card. This is going to determine, this is the core of your game, or these power cards. Now that is going to be the core unit of attack and or defense. And that was a level 7 fighting that you saw on the screen there. That means that anyone who has a 7 or higher on a fighting attribute or stat can use that card to attack or defend. And that's the same with any of those 4 types that you saw earlier, the energy, fighting, strength, or intellect. There's power cards for all 4 types, and there are, again, all levels of all 4 types. So you have power cards 1 through 8 that exist for the energy, fighting, strength, and intellect. And again, that's the core unit of the game. That is what you primarily attack and defend with. And again, if they have a stat high enough in that type, they can use it. So again, Captain America, Wonder Woman in that deck would be able to use that card to attack or defend. X-Babies would not, Vision would not, in that, because they don't have that stat being that level. So that is what determines who can play that card as well. So again, and that's the basic unit. All 4 types do that, and that's what you attack or defend with. Now there are some other cards, special cards, universe cards, and honestly, through the course of the gameplay, universe cards were not used that often, except for teamwork cards, which are very prevalent in any kind of tournament deck now. And teamwork cards, let's see if I can find one here for you. Alright, so teamwork cards. Let me show you this. Okay. Alright, so teamwork cards are these cards. And so you can see here, this is a teamwork card. Now, and there are other universe cards, but that's really the universe card that stayed and that was actually used and is used to this day in most tournament decks in terms of universe cards. Most of the other universe cards were not that useful. They could still be used and be useful, but in terms of the overall scope of all the possible cards you could have in a deck, they were just far less useful than others. So there were training cards and basic universe cards, which were the other 2 core from the first couple sets for universe cards. But teamwork's with the others, and those are the ones that still are used a lot. Now what that allows you, normally you play one card, it's usually an attack, and then your opponent gets to defend, and then it's his turn. The reason why these teamwork cards are so popular is it allows you to get multiple attacks at your opponent before he has a chance to throw his attack at you. So you have a chance of possibly wasting or using up his defenses or his attacks that he would otherwise use on you to try and whittle down and get rid of those cards, or have multiple attacks hit before he has a chance to do much to you. So again, teamwork cards, very popular. And again, this is more of a basic rundown, general idea. More detailed, minute specifics you can find in the instruction manual if you pick that up, the rule book, anything you find online. And that is, I use a lot of teamworks in my deck as well because they're very useful. Now, like I said, the power cards are the core of the game. Teamwork cards are very heavily used because they're very useful. Now, the other card that's used in the game that's quite useful is the special card. Now, these are very unique, and they are going to be specific to the character. This one is specific to Captain America. So you see it says avoid 1 attack, and it has a name and a title. Now, the Special cards were also heavily very favored because they allow you to basically break the rules as long as the character is there to play the card and he plays it. Then that card will do whatever it states or says on the card. So that was an avoid one attack that I showed you. So that allows him to basically be able to, no questions asked if he plays that card, to defend against any attack that's thrown at him, no matter what the level is or what type it is, for that one attack. And so it's a very good card, very nice card, and it's again something he can play. Now it is unique to them if it has that character's name on there. So only Captain America can use it. None of the other team members would be able to use that card, but it's a very good card for him. So those are really the big ones that are used, and that's again the Teamworks and the power cards and the specials. Now, one other card also that's used often, I don't say it's the core of any deck, but used often enough because it's still decently useful, and those are ally teamwork cards. So I will find one of those for you and show you an example of those, if I can find one. I just need to see if they have one. There we go. Okay. So, and here's an example of an ally card. And that is useful because that will allow you to actually, what that will allow you to do is actually be able to go ahead and do an attack and then play a special right after. So it allows you to maybe, if you want to activate some game effect and not waste an attack on your opponent and just be able to play that game effect right away, then it allows you to do that. You play that card and play the special. So it's another way of playing more cards at once. And so that was still favored, and is still favored. So those are really the basics, the core. Now another popular card type used in decks that is very effective, that is used quite a bit, are these little cards here, which I'll show you here. And this is something called an event card. And that is specific to your event set. Okay, so that little event card I showed you earlier, that's from a set of missions, and that event that I just showed you now is attached to that mission set specifically. What it allows is a one battle change, so it affects the entire battle when it's drawn, and it'll affect the conditions in some way or have some effect for that battle. And it'll last for that battle only, and then it's discarded, but it affects both players. There are some other cards that came out that exist in the sets that some are used, some are not, and so just be aware of those. But again, so it's a very simple game. Those are the cores. Now, again, you attack and defend. Your specials will have an effect. You attack with Teamworks. You attack with those ally cards. But it's a very simple game of attack and defend. And you try to outlast your opponent. Really, it's an endurance game. You're trying to outlast your opponent and try to beat him by getting your missions done first, or knocking out all of his characters before he knocks out yours. And that's the simple gist of it. Now, the game. Now, my thoughts on the game. First of all, I would definitely say and recommend anyone who's a comic book fan and a fan of gaming to look at this and seriously take advantage of getting into this game. I've had a lot of countless hours of fun with this game. Win or lose, it is a fun time, a fun experience, because you get that comic book experience. And it can play pretty fast. I've had games that last 2-3 rounds, and with the mission aspect to it, very simple to do. You can go up or down very easily, very quickly, or it can last longer, depending on, again, how things go. But I definitely recommend it. Now, it feels like a comic book experience, like I said. You have your characters, you have your hand of 8, you have those power cards, the specials, you have those things that you can throw at your opponent, and you're just going to start attacking and defending until cards run out. score it, move on. So it feels like a battle. It feels like you're ready to go. It feels like these characters meet and are ready to collide, just like in a comic book setting. When you read those comic books, it feels like that. And that was a very good, that's a very big plus. Now, also, it's a very simple game. Now, things did evolve as the game went on with the expansions. There were more cards, like I said. They got a little more convoluted, and that was some detraction to the game. Some players fell out after the different, additional card types that weren't really needed per se. That didn't add a lot to the game. But the core of the game, the functionality, the actual mechanics that were the heart of the game never changed. They remain the same and continue to remain the same to this day. And that is a great thing. It's easy for players to get in and play the game. It's simple to understand. And people enjoy this game. They love this game, and I love this game. Now, I mentioned the versus system previously, and so since I'm talking about my thoughts on the game, let me just put my little 2 cents in on this. Versus, if you like Versus, it's a great game. I am not a fan of that game, and like I said, it does not deliver a comic book feel to that experience. The best way I can explain it is it feels like a Magic knockoff with a comic book theme plastered on. That's the best way to explain it, really. You see those old Civil War movies. You see the British coming and the Americans, and the American or the colonies fighters, just scattered guerrilla warfare. You see the British just marching in lines, row after row, just in a solid line, big bullseyes on their head. That's what it felt like. That's what it was like playing Versus. It felt like a Civil War game with just comic book plastered on theme that was not succeeding. And especially the resource aspect. Again, it felt like a Marvel, a Magic wanting to be comic book theme. Because, again, you had to slowly build the resources. The equivalent in Magic were lands to give you the mana, while resources giving you the resource points. And it does not feel like a comic book experience with that in there. It does not. It feels like a British war, a Civil War movie. That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like from the moment the game starts until it ends. The only saving grace to some extent are the ranged and the ranged and the flight aspect to sort of take that sort of British Civil War warfare mechanic out, throw it out the window to some extent, and that's really that's my beef with it. It doesn't have that feel, and it doesn't work as a game if you want a comic book experience. Now, like I said, if you like Magic and you like that kind of experience feel to a game mechanic, and you want to have more of that kind of an experience in a game, then go ahead, enjoy that. It didn't fire on all cylinders, or even majority of the cylinders for a comic book film, a comic book game. So, again, that's what I recommend. Is again that the Marvel Overpower, very easy game, very good game, and very easy game to get into. Very solid game. So I highly recommend it. Marvel Overpower. Please, if you can find it, check it out. You can find on the Lackey system. It allows you to play digitally online with other players. So there's that avenue route, or there's always tournaments every year. There are still tournaments on this game, even though it's over a decade or two old. So it's a very effective game. So again, my recommendation, highly recommend this game. So that's Overpower for you. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you like this video, any thoughts you have on Overpower, please list it below. The link below, and let me know. But again, thanks for tuning in, and this is Buck.